Now, as you know, the Australian Defence Minister met with the US Defence Secretary. Nice little touch of the pocket square, not generally a pocket square man, but I like the red, white and blue of the American flag there on Pete Hegseth. Nice little look. And you may well have heard what the news has been out of this, and I know that several of my mates here tonight have been talking about it.
Well, America is once again urging Australia to increase its military spending.
The Trump administration has put our country on notice.
Donald Trump's White House has put an exact figure on how much it wants Australia to increase defence spending.
The Prime Minister has brushed off a demand from the United States to massively boost defence spending.
Because, of course, Orange Man bad, remember? Every suggestion from him, if the Prime Minister says no, 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 then to the majority of people in this country who don't like Donald Trump, then it's a win.
What you should do in defence is decide what you need, your capability, and then provide for it. That's what my government's doing, investing in our capability and investing in our relationships. That's what we are doing. That's what we will continue to do.
Now, Australia, bar this standard of 3%, 4%, 5% of gross domestic product, is not spending as much on defence as the United States would like. And obviously, that in part is because we've gone, OK, we've got to have a defence force, but if things really got serious, the Americans would somehow be able to come and save us. It'd be pretty difficult if they had to get on a ship or take a couple of days to get here when it comes to assets, but that's the way we've run. But I wanted to mention something different here. And this doesn't mean that we shouldn't spend more money, but also it is to temper down the idea that we're not spending any money when it comes to defence. In fact, over the past 20 years, we have dramatically increased the amount of money that we spend on defence. Now, I had a look at the budget papers for 2005 and $15.6 billion, which in today's dollars is $26.5 billion, compares to $51 billion, so basically double, over 20 years. Now, on the side, there's a whole bunch of money, of course, for AUKUS and the $300 billion when it comes to subs. But that number is double where we were 20 years ago. But that number is still basically about half or under half of what the Americans would like us to be able to do. And I think, sure, there's billions of dollars, and I would probably be spending more money on missiles rather than ships that take forever to get from the south to the top and round into the Pacific. But I'm not going to pretend to be a defence military analyst. I'm just a bloke on TV. But perhaps one of the reasons why Australia is not going to be spending any more money on defence is because, before I show you, what do you think the number one thing is that we spend the most amount of money on in our federal budget? Now, Greens and lefties would turn around and say, oh, it's definitely defence, right? Like, surely we're piddling it up at the war with the new submarines and the doubling in 20 years? No. You see, if you have a look at the federal budget that was released earlier this year, the number one thing we spend our money on is that little section in blue. Social Security and Welfare. Social Security and Welfare now is 37% of the federal budget. Health is 15%. Defence is almost 6.5%. And education is at 7%. So for all the conversation about defence spending and should we double it, well, even if we did double it and maybe it became, say, 12%, and maybe it became $100 billion, you'd still be way behind what the actual money they spend on, which is social security and welfare. To put this in dollar terms, about how over the past 20 years, the country's population has grown, but the amount of money being spent in the federal budget has grown way more than that when it comes to social security and welfare. And of course, you can't touch it. You can't talk about it because why? We're getting close to half the country that's got its hand out for something. In 2005, $87 billion or $150 billion in today's money is how much we spent on social security and welfare. Just before I show you, have a guess. Just have a wild guess. How much do you think that's gone up in 20 years? 149 billion, maybe 200 billion, maybe 250 billion? No, $291 billion. The welfare bill in Australia has gone up by 94%. Australia's population has not gone up by 94%. In fact, in 2005, it was about 20 million. It's now 27 million. The increase in population is 37%. The increase in the welfare bill is 94%. From 150 billion back then to 290 billion now. So yes, the welfare bill is going to go up because the number of people that we have here is more than it was 20 years ago. But every single year, every single government for the past 20 years produces a federal budget, and the expectation of the federal budget is what's in it for you? Or from the voter perspective, what's in it for me? And every single year, Labor, Liberal, left, far left, centre, right, government has to produce something that the newspapers can put on the front page, that we can talk about on television, that is the goodies in the budget. Well, guess what eventually happens when you have a culture that is addicted to that? It means that the total spending on welfare, again, goes from $150 billion to almost $300 billion, an increase of 94% when the population has only increased by 37%. It didn't go up by 50, it didn't go up by 60, it didn't go up by 75, it went up by 94%. And those are billions of dollars that we could spend on education or defence. We could spend on health. We could increase in every other area, but because the size of government via welfare is 37% of the entire chunk of change, that is why we are in part in a world of trouble. That is why we are in $1 trillion of debt. That is why we will move to $1.2 trillion of debt before the next election. That is why there will be budget deficits, not for the next 5 or 10, but for the next 40 years. But there's a solution to all of this, and it was freely being offered in the pages of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age today. We should just increase taxes, with a whole bunch of quotes from people saying, we're not overtaxed. Nothing to see here. Everyone, of course everyone should just pay more. Okay, you first.